All right. So as we finish talking about the individual awards, I got a question for you, putting you on the spot, kind of. We had 2 last year. Will we have any Americans on the All-NBA first team this season?
Man, I mean, Cade is someone who I feel like could enter that conversation. Like, obviously, it's Tatum's out for the season, or out for most of the season. Who knows if he's out for the entire season? But he's been someone that's held down a spot on that All-NBA first team for a long time. But I mean, last year, like, we're talking about Victor Wembanyama as an MVP finalist. Like, that would mean he's first team All-NBA. That takes one spot away from Jason Tatum. Luka's back, right? Yeah, Luka's back.
That's Mitchell spot right there.
Yeah, will we have? Cade would be my pick. If there was an American on All-NBA first team, Cade Cunningham would be my pick. Is there anybody? Is it Ant? Is there anybody else that comes to mind for you?
Ant, I'm going to say Ant, because I honestly kind of forgot that Donovan Mitchell had made it last year. I think it's just because of the way that their season ended. But yeah, Ant, Donovan Mitchell, again, if the Cavs have another good year. Jalen Brunson, you mentioned, is another guy. Yeah. But if I had to pick right now, I'm going Giannis, Shea, Jokic, Luka, and Wemby. Like that. That's what it feels like, crazy. Right? Like it's so like crazy. It feels like it's going to be that type of international flair on that team. Because I can look back and see who was on the second team last year. The second team, Steph was second team last year. Brunson, LeBron, and Evan Mobley were second team last year as well. So does Evan Mobley make another leap? I could see that. I feel like it doesn't necessarily get talked about that much. And then last year you talked about third team was Cade Cunningham, James Harden, Cat, who is USA and Dominican Republic, and Jalen Williams, who I don't know the situation is going into the year. So yeah, you talk about guys who could do it. I'm thinking it's a short list. It's Donovan Mitchell, it's Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, maybe 38-year-old Steph. I don't know. I wouldn't count on it, but I also wouldn't count him out. So there's that. It's always kind of funny to think about, like how we talk about this USA World All-Star team, and we could get an all-world, all-NBA first team next year. So that'll be interesting to say. Now, to widen the lens to some team stuff, I know we've talked about the specific conferences, so I guess we go straight to 2 big ones: NBA Cup. And NBA Cup and NBA Finals. What we got? I hadn't really thought about the NBA Cup at all, but I'm curious now if you can, go on the spot. Do you think there's a team that's maybe built for that type of situation more than anybody else? And then we can also talk about the big one with the finals.
That's a really good question. NBA Cup. You know what? I'm not familiar enough with the groups off the top of my head.
True. That's a good point.
But I do think that is the type of tournament where, like, we talk about the Orlandos, we talk about the Atlantas, like teams that really made Denver, again, teams that really made improvements in the offseason. If you want to prove that you're serious and you have what it takes to make a run when you need to win games, give me Denver. Give me Denver to win the NBA Cup this year.
Okay.
Now that comes with a little bit of a caveat, because it's like, does Jokic really care about the NBA Cup enough to like take these games to another level versus what he does in a regular season game? No. But I do think that's a team that, they're here to prove this season that they are back to being an NBA Finals contender. And I think that they can string it together for a couple of weeks and play some of the best basketball in the NBA. So give me Denver to win the NBA Cup.
Yeah, reading tea leaves and thinking about, the first year ever, it was Lakers, a team with vets, over a young up-and-comer with the Pacers. This past year, it was the Bucks team with vets over some up-and-comers with the Thunder. So I'm going to say the history repeats itself a little bit. Let's go Houston. It's like a team that, like, you got a guy, like, their group is tough, though. Houston, Denver, Golden State, Portland, San Antonio.
Oh, wow.
That's
wow.
tough.
All right. I probably should have looked at the groups before I made my pick.
So maybe not. Yeah. But I'm going to still go with it. I'm going to go Houston, because somebody's got to make it out of that group. I'm going to go Houston and then the young up-and-comer. Houston, we'll get some Twins action, too. Houston over Detroit. How about that? Okay. How about Houston over Detroit? That. We'll go with that. That's going to be, I'm not going to think about it twice. I'm going to go with that, and we'll keep it moving to the NBA Finals, because as I thought about it, I saw one of my buddies over the weekend, and he asked me, he's like, hey, man, I've been wanting to talk NBA, and I've been trying to make sense of the Eastern Conference. Are there 3 teams that you trust? And we've talked about it. We had this conversation plenty of times. New York, Cleveland, pretty no-brainers about just what you think about. And then that third team, if you had to just pick 3, is kind of a revolving door, because you can convince yourself into a number of teams, and just like, where do you trust them? So I think that picking this became difficult, but I will give you the floor to see where your head's at, because you did kind of hint at it earlier on our Eastern Conference preview, but I wonder if you're still there.
On a third team that I trust in the Eastern Conference?
Oh, no.
Who I think is going to win the Eastern Conference.
Who's coming out of the East?
Oh, I'm sticking with the New York Knicks to win the East this year. I really am, because You know what? I don't trust the Cavs. Like, I trust them to be one of the best regular season teams and be, right. But at the end of the day, like, they just come up short every single time. And, they're sneaky navigating some injuries to start the season. Like Darius Garland, I don't know if he's going to be ready for opening night. Max Strus has the Jones fracture in his foot. He's probably going to be out until like December. Those are two players that are in their starting lineup usually. I mean, they're going to start DeAndre Hunter. Who knows? Maybe they start Sam Merrill. I mean, they've been starting Jalen Tyson and like preseason. Like, it's going to take a little bit of time for them to get back on track the way that they were last year. And the way they jumped out the gate last year was insane. And then they just rode that momentum and eventually fizzled out in the playoffs. But it's like, or all of a sudden maybe Evan Mobley takes another leap offensively and they find a way to make things click in the playoffs. But I still just don't really believe in them, where the Knicks continue to get more battle tested every single year. Last year they had that really hard fought first round series against Detroit, and then they beat Boston. Like, yes, Jason Tatum got hurt, but they were already up in that series, up in that game when JT got hurt. Could Boston have came back and won the series? Maybe if Tatum stayed healthy, but it certainly wasn't trending in that direction. The Knicks were the better team in that series. And I feel like, they blew game one against Indiana. If they win that first game, they could have been in the NBA Finals last year. And now I feel like they added a little bit of depth. They brought in Gershon Yabusele, they brought in Jordan Clarkson, they brought in Malcolm Brogdon, they brought in some guys so they can use more than 7 players, because really last year, they really only used Josh Hart and Deuce McBride off the bench, aside from random cameos from Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright and whoever the hell else they were throwing out there. Like, really just any dude off that. Timothy Chalamet was almost subbing in. And now they actually have some depth pieces that Mike Brown can use to stretch the rotation a little bit, so that way they're not so banged up and dinged up come playoff time. I really think that this is the year that New York gets back to the NBA Finals, first time since 1999.
Whew. All right. Well, there you go. So New York in the finals, and you got OKC beating them.
I do have OKC, but I really I wanted to pick Denver, but I can't get there. I think
what was the holdup?
I just think that OKC, like we talked about before, man, like the depth, they just have so much depth. And I know that, Denver added Bruce Brown and Jonas Valanciunas, and Cam Johnson's a big pickup, and Peyton Watson's been
Tim
playing.
Hardaway Jr.
Like Tim Hardaway Jr. too. Like, they got some guys that are ready to take a step forward, but like, at the end of the day, like the way that OKC really just beat the brakes off teams last year, and defense is so suffocating, and just how creative they can get with some of those lineups with both Chet and Ihart. And I know you said J-Dub is still dealing with that wrist thing to start the season, but like they have guys that can step up in the meantime. Like, I just think that last year, a lot of people almost like dismiss what OKC did last year.
No, yeah, for sure.
I almost feel like it's kind of like slept on just how dominant they were. Or maybe it's not, slept on is not the right word, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, people are so quick to brush off. No, it didn't.
Yeah.
And people are so quick to talk about or to brush off what OKC did. But I really think that they were, head and shoulders the best team in the NBA last year. I think they're going to be head and shoulders the best team in the NBA again this year. And I think it's going to be Knicks Thunder in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, so I think OKC got better. Right. Like, and not even necessarily in a sense of like, getting Topic back, get well soon, gnarly injury. But, get well soon, but getting him on the court and just, bringing the guys in that they've brought in, not even that they brought in that many people, but just the guys who are improving on that roster. Like, once Jalen Williams is healthy, like he's a young guy, he's going to be better, right? Like Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren will get a chance to, and I talked about this before, they're going to have more opportunity and more of a runway to get to know each other. They don't have the pressure of, oh man, we got to win. Like they're going to say we ain't nothing if we don't win. They're playing freely now at this point. Like, so I think we're going to see a more comfortable version of them. I think Dagnall will even coach more freely. Like, he overcorrected to start the series when he made that lineup change. I don't think he'll do stuff like that anymore. He's more confident in himself. So, I think that it's going to be them. And when I was looking at the Eastern Conference and thinking about the Eastern Conference, and I want to give a shout out to our guy, Steph No, because he talked me into this a little bit to get real frisky and pesky. Last time I said Detroit could be this year's Indiana. Now I'm going and saying Atlanta's going to be this year's Indiana. Give me the Thunder over the Hawks. We're going to have the narrative of Trae Young, who grew up in Oklahoma, grew up going to Thunder games, making his finals debut there. I think defensively, what they have, with Dyson Daniels, bringing in a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, who is the X factor, the swing guy, but they just have so much depth. And then the other narrative, we're going to have Nikhil and Shea in the finals. So we're going to hear that to know. And do you know they're cousins? I don't know if you heard
did you know that? I don't know if you knew that.
I just found out. It's crazy. They talked about that. So it's kind of wild.
They somehow skipped over that in the Western Conference Finals last year. They didn't mention it at all.
You would think they talked about that. But yeah, so I just I'm leaning to the narrative. Could be way off base there, but I could kind of see that being the way it goes. I think that would be a very fun finals. I think that just the big names that could get involved in that would be fun as well. And you mentioned that actually we joke a little bit, but they did talk about we saw a little clip from Starting Five. Did you see that Shea and Nikhil were watching? They show like a little preview from this upcoming Starting Five, and Shea is featured in it. And he and Nikhil were watching the Tyrese Halliburton shot against. They were watching it together. And so I was like, man, really? Cousins, but it's crazy. They're just like hanging out on off days. I'm so excited. They're hanging out off days in the Eastern Conference Finals or the Western Conference Finals. They're like, oh yeah, like let's watch the game together. Which you grew up like brothers. Of course, you're going to do that. Like they literally are brothers, or just first cousins. But very cool, very interesting to see that. Thanks for checking out NBA Sound System Canada on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe below. And find us wherever you get your podcasts. And on Instagram, we have weekly episodes and bonus content throughout the week.